Final Fantasy is over 30 years old now. Let's look at how it changed over those years. Despite having turn-based battle systems right up until the 11th entry, Final Fantasy has always tried to make significant changes or innovations with each new release. Final Fantasy I is the first in the series and undoubtedly the simplest, but even back then, Final Fantasy was setting itself up as something new and innovative. While it may not look like much now, remember that at the time almost all RPGs took place from a first-person perspective. That style certainly has its place, even in modern games, but Final Fantasy was one of the first to let you see the whole battlefield, with your party on the right and enemies on the left. Mechanically, it was very simple. Each character got one turn in which they could attack a single enemy, attack multiple with magic, or use an item. Whoever acted was based on their speed stat, but everyone got one turn per round basically. Think of it as Dungeons and Dragons but without the characters moving around on the battlefield. The original release had one feature that may be a bug as it was removed from later releases. If you set two party members to attack the same enemy and the first one killed it, the second would try and attack the empty space where it used to be. Personally, I find this to be annoying, though some say it just means you have to plan your attacks better, adding another layer of strategy to an otherwise simplistic system. Gear and items were fairly simple too. Weapons and armor just boosted your attack and defense, nothing more, though a character's class would determine what kind of weapon or armor they wore. Magic also functioned similarly to items in that you could buy spells and equip them to a mage. However, they were limited to 3 per magic level, and in the original release, many of them didn't work at all. On to the second iteration of turn-based battles, and there are some big changes here already. Battles themselves are still the classic turn-based affair, though now there are rows. You can place party members in the front row or the back row. Front row fighters will do more damage, but also take more damage. Those in the back row won't take as much damage, but melee attacks won't be as effective for them. This makes it ideal for characters using ranged weapons or magic spells. And now everyone can use magic too. Character classes are a thing of the past. Now anybody can equip anything, even magic. Though some characters start out with stats that make them more suited to certain playstyles. For example, some may have a higher magic stat so they're naturally better with spells. In Final Fantasy II, characters are given a lot more room to grow. While they have the basic stats like attack, defense, agility, etc., each weapon type now has its own skill. That skill will go up the more it's used. For example, Firion will gain points in his sword skill every time he attacks with a sword. Similarly, spells will level up with use. So rather than buying Cure 2 at a shop, you just buy Cure and use it a bunch. It will eventually become Cure 2. This can be problematic because higher level spells use more MP, so you might not want them to level up, but you have no choice. The skill system overall had a number of problems actually. Having attack and sword go up over time with the use of a sword is good as it allows for steady growth in those stats. Things like defense and HP are a different issue. Hit points were more likely to go up if a character ended a battle with low HP. Defense would increase every time a character was hit. What this meant was that it was often best to let your party take a beating and heal outside battles so their HP would rise. It also meant that the best strategy for upping your defense stat was to get your party to beat each other up. It's also worth noting that the game doesn't tell you how those stats increase. So many first-time players would see their characters get to high levels but with low HP, as they'd have been healing them during battle to keep them safe. Later releases changed it so characters got a HP boost every couple of levels, but the defense raising trick was never removed. Overall, Final Fantasy II's battle systems had its problems, but I like the fact that it allowed you to customize the stats of each character. With a little fine-tuning, this can be a great system. Just look at the Elder Scrolls, for example. Final Fantasy III. Boy, we got some big changes here. Once again, battles are turn-based, but class is back in session. Final Fantasy III does away with having skills for every weapon and spell. Now each character can be assigned a class, or job, that determines what gear they can equip and what abilities they can use. This is the first time in the series characters have been able to use abilities in battle. For example, thieves can steal and Dragoon Knights can jump into the air for a delayed but powerful attack. While the job system doesn't allow you to control each stat individually, it did still allow a great deal of customization. While jobs impose limitations, it made choosing your lineup more important. Each character had their own level, but now each job has its own level per character. In other words, if you leveled up Refi as a sage, her sage level would be high, but another character would have to start from the beginning if they wanted to be a sage. Such a system dissuades players from grinding every job to the highest level and encourages players to mix and match so that their party is varied. Given that there are 23 jobs in total and only 4 characters, this also means your party lineup can be heavily customized, and you can play the game in a different way every time. Like, I've never made use of the Geomancer class, so I have that to look forward to next time I play. Of course, this made the actual battles much more engaging for the most part. The only failing I see here is that certain bosses were far too easy if you had the right jobs. On a side note, this was the first Final Fantasy to feature summons. These were limited to certain classes. Now, Final Fantasy IV is an interesting one. Here we have the introduction of the active time battle system. Battles are still kind of turn-based, but in real time. To put that in words that make sense, each character, enemy or friendly, has an ATB gauge, though it is invisible. The gauge fills up over time and they can act once it's filled. The gauge fills up faster or quicker depending on a character's stats. This allowed battles to change in a pretty big way. You now had a little bit more to think about when choosing who would act and when. The game makes use of this in boss battles. For example, early on you fight a fog dragon. During the battle it will turn into a cloud of fog and can't be hurt. Attacking it in this state will cause it to counterattack, so you have to wait till it returns to its normal form so you can do damage again. You can now also have up to 5 characters in battle at a time, and spells are learned through leveling rather than bought. More importantly though, the job system is gone. Characters still kind of have classes, but they can't be changed. Here we see the first instance of story influencing character behavior in battle. Each character's class is tied to their role in the story of Final Fantasy IV, and their unique abilities add to their characterization. Cecil is a Dark Knight, so it makes sense that only he can use Dark Knight abilities. The system is used to create effect during the plot when a certain character changes their class. This plot point is made more impactful by the fact that it affects the gameplay as well. Final Fantasy V brings us back into familiar territory with the job system. Just like in 3, everybody can be whatever they want, and character and job levels are still separate. There are the same number of jobs, but the combat system has been refined. The ATB system from 4 is back, but now there are bars on the screen for each party member. They fill up gradually and a party member cannot act until it's full. This allowed players to see who would be acting next and plan around that. Perhaps the biggest addition though is that abilities can be learned permanently. In 3, when you switch from a thief to a black mage, you would lose the ability to steal. In 5, when you switch jobs, you can equip a secondary ability learned from a previous job. So now you could have a mage who can cast black magic as well as steal. This adds so much more depth and customization to the game. Effectively, it allows you to multi-class your characters, greatly expanding their potential for battle. Now in Final Fantasy VI, it seems like Square wanted to mix 4 and 5. Once again we see there are party members whose abilities are directly tied to their character. Only Edgar can use mechanical weapons, and Sabin is the only one capable of suplexing a ghost train, for example. However, everyone can learn any kind of magic, including summons, which are a big part of the story as well as character development. Summons, or espers as they're called in 6, are used to teach characters magic. Each esper can be equipped like an accessory, and once they're equipped, they'll change characters' stats as well as allowing them to use certain spells. And the longer a character holds onto an esper, the stronger spells it will teach them. You'll be casting Blizzaga until Shiva's had some experience in battle. Again, this is a great system. While it is restrictive compared to 5's job system, it does still allow everyone to learn abilities from espers. Moreover, I like the idea that skills are restricted to certain characters. It adds to their personality and the story is stronger because of it. It also gives each party member a reason for existing. Since they can all learn the same spells, there isn't much to differentiate them mechanically apart from their weapons and skills. Final Fantasy VI also had desperation attacks. When a character's health was low, there was a chance they'd do an extra powerful attack instead of their regular attack. Final Fantasy VII is undoubtedly the most famous in the series, and the first to take things into the third dimension, though that had no effect on the battle system, as they still take place with friendlies on one side of the screen and enemies on the other for the most part. Though now there are only 3 friendly party members out at a time. While it might seem restrictive, remember that everyone can learn any skill in Final Fantasy VII through materia. It's like a more developed version of the Esper system from 6. Materia are balls of magic that are used to harness spells like fire, cure, and even the ability to steal. This time, instead of 1 Esper per character, multiple materia can be equipped at a time. Just as in 6, materia needs to be leveled up before it can impart the more powerful magic. Each materia levels up separately with AP earned in battle. Interestingly, you can have multiples of each materia, but they level up separately. So you can have a level 2 fire that will teach you fire and fire 2, and another character equipped with only a level 1 fire. Summons are now also usable through equipped materia. However, each summon can only be used once per battle, and for the first time, we see actual equipment become more than just stat increases. Materia has to be slotted into equipment instead of just equipped as is, and weapons and armor have varying amounts of materia slots. Early weapons might only have 3 slots, and later ones could have 9 or 10. Though having more equipped isn't always better. Each materia affects character stats. Most of them will decrease physical attack and defense while increasing magical attack and defense. So you might want to keep Cloud from overloading a materia, or his giant sword is going to hit like a giant twig. Some equipment will also have linked materia slots. This is where 2 materia can be set together for more possibilities. For example, magic materia can be linked with the all materia. This allows a spell to target all enemies instead of a single one, though there is a limit to how many times it can be done per battle depending on the all materia's level. Other linked materia include giving your weapons elemental damage or countering with the linked materia's spell when attacked. 7 also brought us limit breaks, powerful attacks or spells that could only be used after taking enough damage to fill the limit gauge. There are 4 limit levels per character, which basically act as a set of limit break abilities. Only one can be equipped at a time. So a character can have all of their level 1 limits or all their level 2 limits, but they can't mix and match. This goes some way to making sure everyone isn't overpowered. Having access to all the limit break abilities would be a bit too much, so now you have to make a choice. Another choice you have to make is when to use limit breaks. Once a character's limit gauge is filled up, they will lose the ability to attack normally. They can still use spells and other abilities, but normal attacks are out the window until the limit break is used. So even though you've got one less offensive option, you might want to keep your limit break if there's a boss coming up and you want to get a head start on him. Now we're getting into the controversial stuff. Final Fantasy VIII brought many changes. For some reason, the character who dealt the killing blow in battle gets slightly more XP than everyone else. It also did away with materia and made summons, now called Guardian Force, or GF, a much bigger deal. And then of course there's the draw system, as well as junctioning. These work in conjunction with GFs to give you arguably the most customization options yet. We'll start with an explanation of junctioning. Each character can have one or more GFs equipped or junctioned. Depending on the GF's level and type, it will allow the character to junction magic onto their stats. Initially, each GF will only open one stat for junctioning. So at level 1, Ifrit will let you junction magic to your attack stat. So you can junction any spell you want to that stat. Let's say Squall junctions fire to attack. The more fire spells he has, the bigger his bonus to attack will be. After leveling up a bit, other stats will open up as well as junctioning spells to weapons and armor. The benefits thereof being that you can increase characters' resistance to certain elements or status effects through junctioning, or add them to your attack. Junctioning blind spells to your weapon will give you a chance to inflict the blind status ailment on enemies. As with the stats, the more blind spells you have, the higher the chance. But where do you get the spells? Well, that's where the draw mechanic comes in. Unlike before, characters do not have an MP gauge. Instead, each spell is an individual item more or less. During battle, you can choose to draw spells from enemies. Different enemies offer different spells of course, and you can only draw a small amount with each turn, and any character can draw, and therefore use, any spell. There are no restrictions. So for example, Squall can draw fire from an enemy. He can get 8 fires, and when he wants to cast fire he'll use one, and then have only 7 left. So what we have here is a system that gives you control over all of your character stats basically, and makes it so you have a choice to make in every battle. If you're junctioning fire to Squall's attack, then every time he uses a fire spell, he'll get a little weaker. But you can draw more to make up for it, so magic becomes a more significant resource than MP was previously. Resting or using an ether won't restore your ability to cast spells, you have to draw them. But not every enemy gives every kind of spell, so you need to choose wisely what spell to use and which ones to keep for junctioning. I like the system. The common complaint I hear is that it encourages you to draw until you've got your stats maxed out and then never use magic, but I don't buy that. It's like saying the other Final Fantasy games are boring because you can grind to level 99 before the first boss. There are some other fairly substantial changes regarding battling in GFs too. As I mentioned, GFs level up separately to the main party. They level up by gaining AP during battles, and this AP goes towards the skills and abilities they'll learn. You get to choose what they'll learn. At any time you can see a list of abilities your GF can learn and set which one the AP points will go towards. Much like junctioning, this allows you to customize your GFs to your particular playstyle. For example, I decided not to put any points towards increasing my GF's attack power and instead gained the ability to junction magic to defense as well as attack. In fact, some of my characters can't even summon GFs because I didn't give them that opportunity. You see, after junctioning a GF, you have to choose what abilities your character will have in battle. Attack is set by default and can't be changed, but there are 3 empty slots below it, but more than 3 possible actions. There's magic for casting spells, draw for drawing, items for using items, and GFs for summoning GFs into battle. Since you've only got 3 slots, you have to choose what you want your party to be able to do in the upcoming battle. I never had Quistis able to use items because she had enough cures to heal everyone, and summoning her GF was more valuable than being able to use those items. Final Fantasy VIII is just full of choices that you have to make regarding your character stats and what they can do in battle. It really is quite a deep system, and one that gets too much flack in my opinion. One last minor thing is that your actions in battle also affect your seed rank, which changes how much you get paid at regular intervals throughout the game. Not clear what affects these ranks, but even this presents another choice for the player. Do you sacrifice a high rank and easy access to guild for the battle strategy you like, or do you play it differently to get more money? Okay, that'll do us for now. In the next part I'll be looking at the last traditional Final Fantasy and moving on to real-time battles. As always, well done for making it this far, and thanks for watching. If you liked it, give me a like, and maybe even subscribe so you don't miss part 2. What battle system is your favourite? Let me know down below.